Good evening, folks. From the dressing room incident in Inchicore to the tumultuous game in Tallaght Stadium, where we've gone again with this famous formation. We've played against this 10-man. Any schoolboy soccer coach watching, when you're 11 aside playing next week, 11v11 after the bank holiday, maybe play a 3-3-3 and one goalkeeper and we'll see what happens. To discuss tonight's match, we have extra times Tom O'Connell, and we also have new daddy-elect that we've been mentioned. We haven't seen him in too long. Donald Hanks, welcome to the show, lads. Chris will be joining us later on his way from Weaver / Hunky Dory / heading to Game Park. Boys, look, we started a couple of minutes late. I've been on Twitter reading some of the stuff tonight, and it seems to be, not unfortunately, but it's getting a little bit not nasty, but there's definitely a few knives out on Twitter and social media tonight. But we kind of just discussed early in the game, and the really annoying thing about tonight, even just the start of the game, we'll just go to you first, Tom, is that we've actually started really well. We kind of got at the game. We mentioned last week about Tallaght possibly starting. The game will suit him. Big game in Rovers, big game in Tallaght. Dickie Kelly started. Sloggett's come back in as well. We've started, I won't say the better team, but we've got at it early doors. We've had a brighter start than Rovers had. And what really happened? How do you sum it up?
Yeah, I suppose, look, like you say, Andrew, having two natural wingers, for want of a better phrase. I mean, you have two natural wingers. You have a target man, number 9. I won't say it's old school, but I mean, you're naturally then thinking, listen, let's get the ball down the wings, put it into the box, and you're creating havoc in the box. You're forcing, I won't say creating chaos, but you're creating uncertainty. You're creating anything. And look, at the end of the day, I mean, we didn't get as many, Poles had very little to do, really. He caught a few crosses. Look, the last 10 minutes or whatever, look, he commanded his box well. He's not Alan Manis, but fair play to him. Anytime a cross came in, he did take it. But early doors, we weren't getting those crosses in, or we weren't there was half chances of headers. I don't think we had a shot on target the first half. I'm open to correction on that. I don't think we had at all. I think 46 minutes, maybe 48 minutes, Poles caught a cross. Apart from that, even the crosses weren't coming in. The crosses were coming in the last 10 minutes of the game, but they weren't even coming in the first 10, 15 minutes. We weren't incisive. And I think we saw how effective two up front can be. I mean, Gaffney, for me, Gaffney is a superb player. Absolutely. He's strong. He's pacey enough. He's not lightning quick, but he's strong enough and quick enough to be able to carry himself. He's very, very clever, very experienced. Himself and Aaron Green kind of toward the Dundalk defensive part. You saw even last year a player who's now at Rovers, Johnny Kenny, was able to link up with Max Mata in that 9-10 as well. We were trying to do it today with Conor Malley and Pat Hoogan. Conor Malley, I think, from what we've seen so far, his probably more natural position is a 10. But he spent a lot of the season so far sitting deep. So you're talking now where he was sitting deep as, I don't know whether you want to use the phrase, the playmaker or whatever. Now he's been thrust into this 9-10 formation. And it seemed to be somewhat new to me now. Look, maybe you guys have seen more of it than I have, but it seemed to be a little bit different tonight. He was getting a couple of half chances with headers and stuff. But look, I think, like you said, there's an awful lot going on social media tonight, and I think the performance tonight was very flat. Rovers were much more incisive. They didn't pepper Nathan Shepherd with shots, but they were very clinical, and I think that clinical edge just Dundalk didn't have it tonight, and unfortunately probably hadn't had it for the last few nights.
We've seen comment. We'll actually, even just we're talking about the game, but even we just go straight. I just seen Frank Carroll's comment. It was something I was going to ask later, but are we at the stage now where on the performance tonight and on the performance of the last couple of weeks, do we start questioning things? From the bench, do we start really saying, is there something amiss? Is it? We can talk about the caliber of player that's come in, and we can talk about players we supposedly missed out on, but Are we that bad of a team, or is it something that's just not right behind the scenes? It's hard to kind of, you don't want to be pointing fingers, but like Frank has said there, he does. We're afraid of our life to. We don't want to be here saying Stephen O'Donnell this, Stephen O'Donnell that, because this is the man we want to do the job. We don't wish any more success on anybody bar Stephen O'Donnell. But even on social media tonight, there's a lot of people, a lot of talking, and I'm hoping it's just not off the bat. This is the joy of a turn-in podcast straight after the game. People kind of get, but we went 2 days late last week, and it was still the same. Nothing had changed. Are we asking serious questions now?
I remember, I think it was, I can't remember what game it was that I was on after this season, and I was talking about the negative train, that there was just a negative energy coming out of the place. The stand seemed negative, the shed seemed negative, everything seemed negative, and it was just getting worse and worse and worse. So we're obviously starting to look at things and question a lot more than we would have questioned before. So his performance as the head coach is going to be questioned. There's no getting around that. When results aren't going well, we're going to look at the coach. You're going to also look at situations like they've had a lot of injuries, which they have. They've got a lot of new players in, which they have.
Yeah.
The recruitment obviously is something that needs to be analysed and looked at, and maybe there's some players that the jury's out on. Maybe there's some players that people have just completely made up their mind on, and no one's going to be able to change their mind on them. But it is still half a season. Like, we're only halfway through the season on players that haven't, as Tom was saying, hasn't played much football in the run-up to this. So there's a lot of mitigating factors. There's a lot of things to analyse. But the thing that you can't avoid is they're not playing well. Regardless of what 11 players are being selected each week, they're not playing well. They haven't played well. I'd say the first half against Bows was the only good 45 minutes of football I've seen them play in a long time. And we were getting results, even thinking of like the Cork game and stuff like that, winning the UCD. Didn't play well, but won. And it's definitely right to look at what the coach is doing, what the recruitment's been like, what the individual players' performances are like. But I think it has to all be together. I don't think we can look at one person in particular and purely blame them, because you look at like the logic of thinking, like people saying like, oh, the recruitment's rubbish and players aren't good enough, but we're still expecting to go to Tallaght and win. Like it's just, there's a lot happening inside the mind of a Dundalk fan, I think, at the minute, and it's hard for us to get our head around what's actually happening and what the reality of all this is. But like, I've been critical of a few things that the coaching team have done and in-game decisions and whatever else. I've been, on the face of it, questioning some of the recruitment, because you can only go by what you've seen. But it's an emotional. We're an emotional breed. Football fans are emotional, and especially Dundalk fans, after being beaten by Shamrock Rovers, after the results that we've had. So it's obviously going to be an emotional evening. But I think there is definitely, like, in the cold light of day tomorrow or over the long weekend before Monday, to have a think about, like, just what actually is the problem. Like, do we genuinely think the coach is the problem? Do we genuinely think the recruitment's the problem? Do we genuinely think all of it's the problem? Like, there's a lot for our heads to try and get around.
Tom, are we still a victim of the Kenny era? I know we're going back here a little, but are we still a victim of, because we're used to that? Like, I even said to someone earlier on, we the last time we played, in my opinion, the last time we really played consistently well, and people won't like this, it was under Vinnie Peart the second time round. That's the last time we probably went out and had a really good run at a game of football. And we expected, like, Stephen O'Donnell had a good team last year. This team seems to have petered off. I know what Donald's saying, we're only halfway through a season, but are we guilty of kind of, going back and kind of having the memories of Stephen Kenny, what he done at the club? Is that kind of a really bad stepping stone, a really bad mistake we're making here? Trying to not compare, but we're trying to analyze this through those kind of rose-tinted glasses, I suppose, from years ago.
Yeah, I think so. I think, like, look, if we look at when Stephen Kenny came to Dundalk, he had the point to prove. He had built a long management career. He was well over a decade in the job. He had, suffered many, not only suffered successes. He had enjoyed successes, like with Longford, Derry, And then, I mean, he had a tough time with Shamrock Rovers, and he was coming to Dundalk to rebuild his career, his managerial career, to get it back on track again. And he took players that needed to do the same, or that he felt could do the same. He took players who maybe were coming back from England, maybe not making the breakthrough there. He took players who were maybe hadn't made the breakthrough at League of Ireland level, at the size of the clubs that maybe they should have been, like the likes of Brian Gartle. He took from Portadown, the likes of Curtis Byrne, the likes of Dane Massey. Darren Meenan was Darren Meenan had never stayed anywhere in this too long, and he became an assist extraordinaire. You look at these players, and he kind of put the bit between their teeth, and they stood up for him because they were all on the same journey together. They were all looking to either rebuild or push their careers forward. Whereas with Stephen O'Donnell, his managerial career is in its infancy, and we don't know how good a manager, how good a coach or head coach or whatever phrase you want to use, we don't know how good he is going to be in time. And I think Donald, you said it there, like, we're halfway through this season. The experience we lost last season in this season's squad, like you look at the likes of Azeri Williams, the likes of Hayden Muller, the likes of even Rayhan Tulloch, to a certain extent, Conor Malley, these guys don't have the level of experience that would have been in the previous team. You look at Peter Cherry won the league, Dundalk, in 2014. He was replaced by Gary Rogers, who has hundreds of League of Ireland appearances. He came in, even then, Gary Rogers took a season before he was on the verge of the Ireland squad then in 2016. But he was coming off the back of hundreds and hundreds of league appearances. He was used to the league. Whereas these guys, look at, like, I know Andy Burton was on the press box a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how Nathan Chip has been a gem of a signing, and absolutely. And I mean, but it's very rare to get a player so young, so inexperienced to the league that's going to take off. You look at Shamrock Rovers tonight. They were playing. Sean Kavanagh was virtually their third choice left back. If you take it that Ferrugia was suspended and Trevor Clark was injured, like, Sean Kavanagh would walk into any other team in the league and he's their third choice left back. I mean, in reality, that's what we're up against. That's what we were like. Our left back today, Darrell Leahy, fairly experienced. Look inside him. You had Andy Boyle, very experienced, but Andy Boyle hasn't played a game didn't play a game for Dundalk in all of May. His last game for Dundalk was in April. Beside him was Hayden Muller, who's barely played. Who outside this season has barely played. You look to the right hand side of him, Archie Davis. Archie Davis could be a fantastic player in years to come. But again, this is he's learning the trade, and you have those all around the place, and we don't have, bar Pat Hooban, who's there from the very start. Keith Ward went and came back again. Yes, he's very experienced, but is Keith Ward going to give you 90 minutes week in, week out? Yes, don't get me wrong. He proved me wrong maybe last season, where he's given more, and certainly this season given more than I had expected. But the injuries to the likes of Robbie Benson, Dan Kelly, we saw obviously Pat Hooban's injury last year was catastrophic to the season somewhat. But these experienced, John Mountney as well, these experienced guys, the loss of these experienced guys coupled with the new guys learning on the job means that we probably have to be patient. It means you're going to get up and down performances, and it means, like you say, maybe it might be no harm to realign our thoughts and think, listen, I won't say we spoiled with the Kenny era, but that, listen, pre-Stephen Kenny, there was a period where Dundalk weren't necessarily booming up the top of the table, and it might be no harm to kind of allow a settling down period. Like you said there, Donald, there are a number of factors at play here. Stephen O'Donnell himself, when asked, I don't know who exactly asked the question about talking about recruitment, was kind of somewhat non-committal about the size of its budget and stuff like that. We know there has been talk. I have no idea. I don't think very few of us have any idea about the size of the budget. But look, there has been talking about investment in budget and stuff like that. We see that, saying 2 or 3 players after the league had started. So that's never necessarily a sign that the budget is that big that you're fending off other League of Ireland teams. Look, there are question marks, and I think it's no harm maybe to have a bit of patience to understand that there's going to be there's going to be up and down performances. As long as Dundalk are not back down at the bottom of the league, competing with relegation, kind of allow this settling period. And if Stephen O'Donnell is going to be half the coach Stephen Kenny was, he'll need time. He'll need to settle down. And maybe last season, pretty much achieving third place was, I won't say a rod for his own back, but he nearly overachieved. I don't know. Look, some people might disagree with me on that. And look, everyone's entitled to reviews. Look, this is, if everybody was right and everybody was wrong, there'd be no need for shows like this. But that's why comments. Football and sport is an emotive thing, like you said, Donal. And there are people who are going to agree with me, people who are not going to agree with me. But I think a bit of patience, a bit of time, a bit of reason, and hopefully less than 4 or 5 years time, but in 3-4 years time, whenever Rovers' dominance falls off, and look, we've seen yourself. It comes in cycles. Always had it, Shell's had it, Dundalk had it, Rovers have it now. If we can be the team that are primed for position when the Rovers cycle ends, well, look, you know what? That's not a bad position to be in, and it's about matter of giving these players time and coach time to settle in.
Donal, just to go on what Tom's voice of reason is bringing to the show tonight, will he get time? Do you think that he'll get time? I don't see why at the minute he won't. I don't see why he wouldn't. But I was listening to James Rogers on the press box during the week. The local owners have come in and it's been very quiet. Nobody seems to really know. Like Tom had said, no, look, we no right to know what wages are and money's been spent. We've no right to know any of that. But, is there a kind of a disjoint there between, I realise now we're 18 minutes in and we haven't even discussed the game yet, really. But this is our last question just before we discuss the match itself. But, is there a bit of a disjoint there? Is there maybe something, that Stevie wanted to sign up for and maybe it hasn't been followed through on? We don't really know, but you're hoping that he will get the time. Do you think the club as it sits will be patient with him? I
think they will. I don't think, as bad as some of the performances have been and as bad as the situation is, I don't think anybody can look at the squad that we have compared to some of the other squads in the league and think that we can do better than third. I think third is the ceiling for this group of players. So he's well within whatever that target is of finishing third. Qualifying for Europe again is obviously going to be the target. And we're nowhere near being able to say he's going to do that or not going to do that. So they can't really make a decision and say he's failed at what he's supposed to do. The problem is going to be if this sort of dissent that is amongst ourselves, the fans and everything else, if that sort of gets into the club and that gets into offices in the club, but if that gets into conversations around the club, that that's where it might turn. If he loses his head, if he doesn't want to be there anymore because he doesn't like the players that he's been given, or if he is the one signing the players and there's somebody in the offices saying you wanted these players, so you deal with it. So I don't think they'll make a drastic move. Cut to the Curb Your Enthusiasm music tomorrow when he actually has been sacked. But I don't think we're at that stage. I think there's if we want to look at an absolutely hideous example, you could even just look at Stephen Bradley. I don't think that. So I haven't seen a huge amount of Shamrock Rovers games, but the ones that I have seen, I don't think Stephen Bradley's level of coaching has changed that much. I think his squad is absolutely exceptional. If you gave Stephen O'Donnell that squad, I think he could get a tune out of it the same way Bradley does out of Rovers.
Yeah, so, and it's not that long. When Bradley's first season, I do remember a lot of calls for his head after maybe.
I think it was more than the first season.
Yeah, it was just crazy.
2 or 3 seasons in.
Yeah, he got a real tough time at the beginning. But that's what he was up against. He was up against the likes of an us or Cork, a decent Cork and stuff like that. So exactly. I suppose time is the key word, is it?
Yeah, and it building the recruitment thing is tough to get right when you're looking at bringing in 6 or 7 players every season. You're one bad crop of players away from having just a wasted year. And maybe it takes a year of being right, no, this player doesn't work, this player works, this player doesn't work. And you build on it, which is how Rovers got to where they are now, where they had their core players, the names of players I forget, and build on it, and every season bring in 2 or 3, and some of them don't work and they move them on, some of them do work, they keep them, build around them. It's the long game that we have to play. Like Tom's saying, if Rovers are in this position now where they're dominant club, we have to just be smart about how we follow that and how we make progress going forward. And to make proper progress, you need to give the head coach, the manager, coaching staff time. We can't be a year and a half in and saying, no, look, it's not going to work, when he has essentially done everything he's been asked to do.
Yeah.
Like, he's not been asked to challenge for the title, especially not with that squad. So he's not doing anything wrong. You know, the thing will be like, say, playing UCD on Monday, which would there be more than like 1,500 people at it? 5 o'clock on a bank holiday Monday. Like, it's an awful fixture, and that kind of thing of like, there's no excitement, and whether some people might look at the coach and be like, you're the reason there's no excitement. I don't know. There's a lot going into it, but I can't see them making a move. I don't think they should make a move. I think we're still a long way away from making those kinds of decisions. But like I said, cut to Tuesday and he's gone.
Cut to maybe 11:30. We're still half an hour, probably half an hour.
Yeah, have they left the dressing room yet, or they're still in there?
Yeah, that's another thing. Like, you know, they had their incident in the dressing room last week, so I don't know what was said in the dressing room, but look, they've come out tonight. Look, they played against 10 men. Just, you know, we're 23 minutes in there. We haven't even discussed the game. We've mentioned Sheps. I know, Tom, you're in the goalkeeping union, and same as Chris, when he comes on, he'll be spitting lyrics about how he played goals for. I don't know, we know what team he played for, Winter League. I don't know who he played for. But, you know, we take a kind of a sliding doors moment. Like, Nathan Shepherd has had an outstanding first half. You know, really. So he's come out against Aaron Green, unbelievable stop on close range. But then, as luck would have it, Aaron Green, that absolute thorn in Dundalk's side over the last couple of seasons. Anytime we seem to play against Aaron Green, no matter who he plays for, he always seems to grab a goal. But it's just a bit of bad luck. The ball's probably going wide. Sheps comes across. He's almost coming across. He's coming across that fast. It just hits him and goes in. It's just it's one of those moments, like, you know, how's your luck? You've had a decent start and goal, and then you crops up something like that. It's just it's a real kick in the teeth, especially up in Tallaght on a night like that.
Yeah, I think, look, I mean, if you're gonna, again, look, we mentioned the strength of the Shamrock Rovers squad. If you are going to get a result, you need all the breaks to go your way. And that's where we are at the minute. And yeah, look, we didn't, and I think now, again, I'm open to correction on it, but I think there was a little nick on the cross as it came across as well. So I think there was possibly a little nick, and then Green gets a touch on it, and then it goes in off the inside of Shepherd's calf. And look, it's pure unfortunate. But by the same token, we had the 2 or 3 wake-up calls before that you couldn't say, listen, that was the only chance they had. I mean, Shepherd, there is a reason he has been a star performer for Dundalk for the last 18 months. You don't want your keeper to be a star performer. If your keeper's a star performer, there's something wrong. Like, fundamentally, if your keeper comes off at the end of the game and he's clean as a whistle, well, you've done something all right. Whereas, I mean, you're coming off, and look, it was something actually, it was a trait that Gary Rogers used to have every game. It's nil. Like, when Dundalk even were dominant, you know, the opposition would have a chance at 0-0. Rogers would usually save it, and then it'd go 3. It'd end up in 3 or 4-0 win for Dundalk, and everyone would forget about that save. But it was that save which kept Dundalk in the game, because back in those days, at the team, and again, look, we talked about not harking back to the Kenny era. So we forgive me for this one, but where if that goal goes in, then people can just shut up shop. So I mean, you saw today, like, that goal went in, and the Rovers had a 1-0, so it was on Dundalk to come out and get a goal back. Even then, so I mean, when Ronan Finn was sent off, Rovers changed the back from a back 3/5, whatever way you want to say it, to a back 4, and let Dundalk, you know, I won't say they dropped back. That's been disingenuous to Shamrock Rovers, but they weren't maybe the attacking threat that they had been. And again, that's because they have that 1-0 lead. If you don't have that 1-0 lead, you go down to 10 men. You're risking that if you do sit back for that long, you're going to bring pressure upon yourself. Whereas they were content enough to kind of know that they had the players, and look, as it proved that on the break they scored, and that was it. Good night, Irene. Like, but in terms of going back to Nathan Shepherd, yeah, look, he's top class. He had a top class first half. He was very, very unlucky with that goal. I mean, I think Leon Poles has played 7 games since Manus's injury. I think that's his 3rd clean sheet, and I still don't know how good a goalkeeper. Obviously, I mean, he has to be a decent keeper, like playing for Shamrock Rovers, who are now currently top of the Premier Division. But how good he is and where he ranks, we don't know. I mean, Conor Cairns is a superb keeper, but again, we've seen a lot of him playing. We've seen a lot of him in action. Brian Maher, how good he is. He's top class, but we don't see him in action as much. Shepherd, unfortunately, we've seen him in action a lot, and like you said, he had a good first half, and just didn't get the break on the goal, and ultimately could that have changed the course of the game? Possibly not, because they were dominant, but yeah, we needed the breaks that we didn't get tonight.
Yeah, that seems to be a running kind of theme, whereas, Rovers have done it for years. They've always got that bit of luck. And even if you take, we've had a chance coming up to half-time, Malley's header, it's called for a foul. I thought it was offside. I still don't, I haven't looked back at it yet to see the foul, but even the header, it's hit the keeper, he saved it, but even at that moment itself, you should be looking to, at that closer range from that ball, you should be looking to put that in the back of the net. It wouldn't have counted anyway. But that kind of seemed the start of events for the second half. We got in at half time, even enough game apart from the goal, but we come out in the second half, we've gotten an absolute master stroke of luck. We had just been talking, Donald, about how Ronan Finn was able to run past. He must be, you were saying he's 50 years of age. How is he running past our wingers with the ball? And lo and behold, the ball's run near the out, and he just takes, he's definitely taken one for the team. He probably knows another touch, Tallaught's in on goal. That early in the game in the second half, it's probably a silly mistake from him, but he's just chopped him down. It's an absolute red, but your eyes light up now. They did light up, but then they go quickly back down. We just lost Tom. Yeah, apologies. It's just back. If you're listening on audio, Tom O'Connor's gone. But it just seemed to be, maybe this is the night where we play against 10 men. It's in Tallaght. It's against Rovers, and we might get something here. And it just never looked, even with it just never looked on. Even like the free kick is probably the closest we've come in the second half. That free kick from that red card, it's probably as close as we've come to scoring in the second half. And it's just so, it's not poor, it's just so disappointing. It's just, again, it's a lackluster display against 10 men.
Yeah, you see, it's there's going down or playing against 10 men when you're in front, which is one thing, even when it's level, and the other team need to come out and Tom's back. The other team need to come out and try and break you down. That's obviously a different style of football then. But when you're up against it, when you're 1-0 down and playing against a team that know every single player on their team knows what their role is, even when, and this is obviously a big gripe that people have with their own coaching setup, that once Rovers went down to 10 men, now they do have plenty of experience at it the last few weeks, that when they go down to 10 men, they know what formation to go into, they know how to play it. But they didn't get pulled out of shape. They didn't look like they had to readjust much. They were just right, 4-4-1 or whatever way, it was a back four anyway, and then from there on, but they didn't panic or lose control of the game. And we have this thing now where we're making decisions, making changes when we're trying to chase the game, and it just turns into a mess. It's just players just being thrown all over the place, and there doesn't seem like a coherent system of how we're going to chase a game then. And Rovers have had plenty of experience being down to 10 men. We've had plenty of experience chasing the game where we need a goal, so we should be better at being able to chase the game because we've done it a bit. But at the same time, I just, the gulf in quality to Rovers being down a good 7 or 8 players tonight and their squad compared to ours is I think, not that it's the big takeaway, but it's definitely one of the takeaways from the night, that they are absolutely better set up for us, or better set up to win games of football than we are, regardless of the situation. And when I think everybody, either tweeted it or everybody thought about it or everybody said it to whoever they're watching the game. When Rovers went down to 10 men, we're like, oh, we're fucked now. This is it. Game's over. No way we're coming back.
Tom, just got you back on this before we, in case you have to zip off again. Just one last one. Yeah, what Donald's saying there is right. If it goes back to the question of what Stephen Bradley has at his disposal. So is even a 10 or a 9-man strong Rovers team better than our 11? Like that's what we're dealing with now. This kind of we can even if we're just based on tonight, we don't want to talk about the 10-man from weeks ago because we played some shockers. But is that what we're up against? There is that massive gulf now on these squads, isn't there?
Well, yeah. I mean, you look at let's say for talk's sake, whether you want to call it their back four, their back five, right? Like they had Lee Grace, who they actually paid a fee to take from Galway United a couple of seasons ago.
Yeah.
You look at the Dan Cleary, who came home from St. Johnson. We saw Dan Cleary here. Dan Cleary's quality.
Yeah.
They had, Sean Hoare suspended. They had, look at tonight then, Pico Lopez. I mean, Lopez, for me at Bohemians, yeah, he was one of the best. He would have been in the conversation about being one of the best. And when he moved to full-time, he's transformed as a player. Whether it was full-time trainer or what, but for me, he's outstanding. So, I mean, you're talking there 3 absolutely top quality centre halves. And you look at what we have with Hayden Muller, who in 3 or 4 years' time, maybe a top quality centre half. You have Andy Boyle, who, like I said, hadn't played a game in a month and was thrown straight back in again. So that's their central defence against us. I mean, on the bench, you had Louis Annesley, who hasn't played since he was sick. His last game, and again, I'm open to correction, that I think was the 5-0 over Pats. Waziri Williams was dropped tonight. I thought probably a little bit unfortunate. I think I like an awful lot of what Waziri Williams does. Yeah. But again, he's learning his trade. I think, we all remember, probably showing our age here, but when the likes of Michael Hector was on loan, there was, and you don't like to say it, but there was a mistake in him because he was learning his trade. Yeah. The chap went on to go play for Chelsea, went to Reading, has been capped at senior international level for Jamaica. I don't know, maybe you had people who were able to spot that potential when he was here. I didn't think he'd go to those heights when he was here.
Yeah,
top class. And look, will Waziri Williams go on to that? I don't know, but you've got to give him games to do it. I mean, that's what you're up against. You're up against the players who have performed at a serious level versus the players who are learning their trade and go back. And I see somebody mentioned in the comments there, we're missing the likes of Robbie Benson. Robbie Benson, again, look, in time, when we look back 10, 15 years' time, Robbie Benson will be in the conversation for one of the best midfielders of the decade. He's superb, can play. He's probably more natural as an 8, can play as a 10. In his younger days, he actually played up front for Athlone and for UCD. Played for Irish Schoolboys actually up front as well. I think scored against England as a striker. But he's so adaptable. He's played left back for us as well. He played both left and right midfield. He was sent off against Rovers playing right midfield earlier on this season. And again, look, that experience, I think he made his debut from right in 2008, possibly, as a 16-year-old. And that's 15 years worth of experience we don't have. John Mountney, again, that experience that we don't have and we can't replace. You look at who Rovers brought on. Rovers brought on Liam Bort. He's barely played for them this season, and he was outstanding at Bows last season. So again, a guy who was one of the best players in the league last season for Bows is coming off the bench for a Shamrock Rovers team that are down 4 players suspended and 2 players injured, and they're then bringing off the bench a lad who was outstanding. We're bringing off the bench a lad who, again, look, Cammy Elliott could turn out to be the next Gary Twigg. I don't know. But at the minute, his pedigree doesn't extend very far in the Scottish Lowland. And I've no disrespect to him, but if you're comparing his experience of the league and his goal scoring at a high level, at the minute he doesn't have it. May end up being a goal scoring legend for the club, but isn't there yet. Versus what Rovers are bringing on in the likes of Liam Burt, who has shown, who has performed. I think the squads are miles apart. I think tonight is probably a very good example of that. And again, look, it goes back to, I suppose, the fact that we need to just look at it and go, well, where are we operating, and going forward. If you look at back in 2019, if you look at the squads from 2019, pretty much every club in the league is about 2 or 3 players from those squads, bar Rovers. Rovers have maybe 8 to 10 more players, and again, that's building the squad. Remember, if you go back to the 26th, again, we spoke about not going back, but it just as an example, if you go back to 2016. We signed 2 players. We signed Robbie Benson and Patrick McElhenney. That was it. And then went on to have the most successful season that we've had so far. Again, it's that continuity. So again, look, I see a question that came in there about loan players come back in the summer. The likes of Johannes Viakoko. Will he go back in the summer? Maybe, maybe not. He hasn't got a huge amount of football. But there's other players who have the chance to come in possibly and get 6 months, but there's also the chance then that some of the players who haven't featured and could come back from injury and could like the likes of Louis Annesley, could settle themselves down in the team by the end of the season. There's another year left in them. Sign them up for another year, and then you're building that continuity. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to bring in this absolute chancer. He's pretending he's in Brada. Oh, Chris, welcome to the show. But I tell you what I want to do now. I want to fast forward. I want to get inside Tom O'Connor's brain, and I want to fast forward. I can't wait for these next 3 seasons where everybody's top class. Like if we can get a new version of Gary Twigg, that alone fills me with excitement. If I thought Cammy Elliott has that pedigree in him, and like Tom, look, we could be playing this if we're lucky enough to have 5 or 6 seasons out of this Egypt of a podcast that we have. If we need to cut this and save this even for 12 months' time to say, look, Tom O'Connor hit the nail on the head here. What we're trying to stop. What Tom, Tom is straightforwardly pointed out. The gulf is massive. Donald said it as well. Chris, I know you're in Weavers Park. I don't know if you caught the highlights, but again, we've come unstuck against 10 men. Look at the 1-0 up at half time, but we started really well. But it just seemed to be, from what you've seen and heard, it's just another week that, although it's only 2-0 at Tallaght against the league leaders and league champions, we just not flattered to the sea. It was just such a lackluster, 40 minutes, 45 minutes again with 10 men. But like we just mentioned, and Tom was just speaking about, the gulf of Rover squad compared to ours, they could nearly afford to play us with 10 men because they're bringing on players that would probably walk into our team. And that's really a frightening stat to look at when you kind of, as disappointed as we are. It's a real kind of, it's an annoying thing, but it just goes to show the difference in levels and what on squad capabilities, I suppose.
Yeah, look, and I think, like I was listening to you coming down the road there, and there's a lot of truth to many of the points made. Like, I think that, yes, there's hangover from the successful Stephen Kenny era. Yes, there's an overachievement last year, which, kind of thinking, well, are we easily the 3rd best team in this league? I think there's probably more of a leveling up this year. We're seeing obviously we're seeing more injuries this year than we normally would have had in comparison, in particular to last year. And I think nearly every player that came into the squad last year that Skip brought in pretty much hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Like, was that an anomaly in itself? Possibly, to have so many players bed in so easily, kind of just worked so well. So I think there's that. And like you say, you think of the gulf. Like, there's probably, although we're saying, let's not have a hangover from how great everything was under the Stephen Kenny era and trying to compare that to exact same now, because it's all night and day. This could also be the tail end of, consider how far back we fell under the last year with Peak 6. And at that time, Rovers were kicking on. They were bringing Jack Byrne back, and, he was getting regular football called up to the Iron Squad, and we were going, madcap stuff at the club. So that's not an easy fix by any means then to get back to that level straight away. So I think when you add all that in, definitely an overachievement from last year, then this is where we go. Do you know what the funny thing is, lads? For the game today, I was kind of like, geez, I'd take a draw here, no problem. At no stage did I ever entertain where we could go there and possibly win. So I think there's definitely a level up of my own expectations of what coming in. And when I seen we were 1-0 down, I was like, yeah, oh well, yeah, kind of half expected that. And then when I seen the sending off, because I did, a tablet beside me with the RT player on, so watching the game and that. So apologies if the camera didn't follow the ball at times in Weaver's Park tonight. That's clearly what happened. I think, I seen us, go up against 10 men, and I just went, oh, this hasn't worked.
And as Donal said, I think everybody on Twitter had the same.
Yeah.
I tend not to I don't go on Facebook that often unless it's for our kind of page. But Twitter seems to be, for League of Ireland, Twitter is lightning. Like, yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Like I should mention, believe it or not, we are giving away a pizza tonight for the best description of the game. I probably haven't mentioned that yet, but we were so kind of engulfed in the performance. And
we haven't given a description of the game yet.
For anybody listening back in audio, Tom.
I thought I'd just be in for the tail end and kind of the fun quips part. No, we haven't got to that. No,
there will be no fun quips tonight.
We mentioned last week, Chris, that when the lads were kept in the dressing room, when we kind of thought, right, there's going to be this little bit of, and in fairness, look, we started okay. It just seemed to be, I don't know now if it's a thing, like, right, we're down to 10 men, here we go again. I don't know if that, I'm sure the boys don't pay too much attention to social media, too much like what we have to say, but is it just creeping in now that maybe, look, like one thing I'll say is when you play against 10 men, it's more physical than playing against 11 because they will hit you harder, further up the field to stop you, keep you away from their goals. It doesn't always work out. Like if we go down to 10 men, Rovers probably score 4 because they have a better team overall. But is it a thing where, right, they've already resigned to saying, right, the very best we're going to get out of here is a draw. And then they don't even get that. Even if you take the goal, like the second goal they've scored, Rory Gaffney's from Town. I absolutely hammered Rory Gaffney here when we started this podcast first. I thought he was one of the worst individuals I'd ever seen at Oriel Park. He has been outstanding for the last, I don't know how long. He's like,
this is what, second or third season in the league.
He's exceptional. Donal had said already, he's absolutely exceptional. But he's able to bypass our wingers and squeeze the ball between Doyle, and I don't know if it's Leahy, I can't remember who it is, but it's basically Paul Doyle playing centre back because Boyle's been caught further up the field. Yeah. And he's just run in, he's able to round the goalkeeper unchallenged. And like to have an extra man, and it's only 1-on-2. Like, I mean, it's just like a normal setup for a striker playing against 2 defenders. There just seemed to be nothing forward. It just seemed to be, I can't make head nor tail of it. I really can't. And it's I don't know if it's harsh on Skip to say, look, this isn't working, or whatever they're doing, or if it's just bad luck. Like there's only so much bad luck you can get. But I think we're at the stage now where these players are clearly just not. There's a 1 or 2 that just maybe aren't capable of. Like Frank had said that there's some going back in July. Maybe that could be the best thing for them if we can free up their wages and get somebody else in.
If ever there was a question laid out, Dundalk's failure to beat 10-man teams and the frustration, that is a Donal Hanks question, but I'll let you come in on that in a second, Donal. But here's the thing. So he keeps the players in the dressing room, the players who failed to beat 10-man packs and at times looked like they were the team who were a man down, and that looked at times again here tonight, considering they go and score a second during it. But 3-4 of those guys who was in that team, starting team, were nowhere near the starting lineup there. So any berating or anything that was done in that dressing room, they went, well, I'm sitting on the bench now. So
I know, and even when you see the lineup tonight, it's positive. You've got Dickie Kelly back.
Yeah, but it's also rushed though, Gally. Like we said, the failure of these players to come in while we've had these injury lists is that none of them will hold down at spot. Yeah. And lo and behold, as soon as half those players were remotely fit, like I'm sure Andy Boyle couldn't have been fully fit tonight, but he's straight back in because we've no other centre half. Yeah. Now, Donal, discuss Dundalk's failure to beat 10-man teams. I'm going to get a cup of tea.
I think I might have talked about this for a while before. I also would like to go to bed at some point this evening. But
here's your final monologue. Go for
it. There is actually just a couple of things. So like this thing of. So I don't know who it was that said we're missing Robbie Benson. I know Tom was talking about how good Robbie Benson is. We missed Robbie Benson a lot last year. He didn't play a lot of games, so we should be. Not that we should be used to him not being there, but We can't be looking at players that have missed a chunk of games and say we're missing them when we know they're not going to be back soon, or they've been missing for 10 games. If someone is out for a game suspended or something like that, then I'm like, yeah, Grant, you might really, really miss them because they're not out injured and they're coming back the next game, and it's probably in your head, next game, this player's back. But we had the same thing last year, like who'd been out injured for ages, and we were absolutely lost without him. And Benson out injured for ages. And it's weird that 2 seasons in a row now we've got players that are out. And part of our way of analysing what's happening in the season is these players are injured and we can't recover. And it's like that just seems absolutely I don't know I don't even know if blame needs to be attached to that. It's just something that we need to think about, because we're obviously going to have injuries. And I know our squad is so small that we can't really manage like too many injuries. And we have had loads of injuries, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's not an excuse. It's just there's certain excuses that we're looking at. But when players that have been injured quite a lot are injured, we surely should be prepared for them being injured because they've been injured so much already. That has nothing to do with playing against 10 men, and has nothing to do with how we had absolutely nobody had any faith that we were going to score a goal tonight. The only thing I will say is that like Ali was saying, I thought we were okay for a good 40 minutes of the game. I thought we played better in that 40 minutes than we did like in some of the games that we've won this season.
Yeah, it was weird. You could nearly accept the 1-0, couldn't you? Going in at half time. You could say, right, okay, that's it's not bad.
And it was like almost exactly what happened to us last year in Tallaght as well. That like we had possession of the ball and then we somehow got stung on the counter attack twice and we're 2-0 down in half an hour or whatever it was in the first half in Tallaght. And it was similar-ish that we were in control and we were on the ball and we were like we weren't under too much, so we gave a couple of chances away, but the goal is just like the inevitability of the goal of like, they scored. And then that's the thing, Chris, like when we were down to 10 men and they scored a second, when you're like, I mean, exactly. We knew that was coming. That's not a surprise.
Yeah.
And I think that's as much as that's in our heads, that has to be in their heads now as well when they're playing. And if they go to play against 10 men, they're like, right, we really either you're trying too hard now because you're playing against 10 men, or it's just in your head and it screws up the wiring and stuff, and you make it more difficult for yourself than it should be. But
I think that what you've said, that's a payoff point. Like there must be more. When they go to 10, like you're not hoping for 10 every game, but the pressure
must be happening that way though.
That's what I'm saying. Like the pressure now straight away, it must go off like a switching right. And maybe they're overthinking it. I don't know. Maybe they're saying, right, we should really we've an extra man here. And maybe that overthinking is just, instead of just playing their game, maybe that's, I don't know, but it's a real issue now. Like, it's not even that we got better when we're playing against 10 men. The game's just been, we've kind of been, we were actually better in the first half. We've had chances, pot chances. Like I was saying, the best chance we probably had to score, I think we've had 2 shots on target tonight. Was Leahy's free kick straight after Ronan Finn's red card. It's just gone wide. Ward's had a shot laid on. Tulloch's probably got to hit it better. The cross that comes in, he's got a bit of a botch finish. But I mean, nothing really that you kind of said, right, we absolutely peppered the goal. Nothing really. Like Tom had said, our keeper holds. He's played half a dozen games. Nobody really knows what he's like because Rovers have been so good at the back. He doesn't have anything to do. And it's just, look, I don't know if it's just on the back. If it was an isolated game, look, we're saying, right, okay, look, it's Tallaght 2-0. Would we have taken Tallaght 2-0 with 11 men and we've played all right? We probably would have. It's the fact that we've gone down to 10 and we just haven't worked them. And I think that's the real issue with this at the minute, isn't it?
But I think the thing of going to Tallaght, the thing is, again, a one-off game. Like we beat them last year, and we could have beat them twice last year. I know it was an Oriole, but in a one-off game, on any given night we can beat them.
Sunday.
Like we know we can beat them on any given Sunday. We can beat them. Well, we actually know it's a
Games
Monday.
are Friday.
No, it's not on Sunday. Yeah. What day is it? But like, I think part of the problem that we have with this squad of players is, fair enough, we know they're probably not going to win the league. I think we can all safely say they're not going to win the league. But you want to be able to put it up to these teams. Yeah. And if you're going to go to Tallaght and lose 2-0, you want to feel like, well, look, They gave it everything. They ran themselves into the ground. And I don't think we're getting that from them. And the fact that you're playing against 10, you're like, surely they should be able to make something happen. And I think we were talking about this after the very first game of the season. I don't think this is a case of living off the memory of the Kenny years. I think this is just expecting a Dundalk team to work incredibly hard. And you would think that they might put Rovers under a bit more pressure. Now, I'm not even sure if saying the thing about like expecting or like taking a 2-0, you wouldn't have been shocked if it was 2-0.
No.
Like
it's
not out of the realms of possibility. But
yeah,
I think just watching the games and it's not even we're not watching this in isolation. We're not watching this like this is one game. We're watching this after the Pats game, after the Bows game, and thinking like, lads, if you can't get up for this, if you can't put it up to them against 10 men, when all everybody's talked about is that you can't play against 10 men, show us you can do it. Show us that you're better than what everybody's saying about you. But they didn't. And I was trying to come on here and be positive. Just as Chris turned up, it's all gone to hell.
Tom was there and it was great, and then Chris came on and everything.
Yeah.
No, I just picking up on something there, Donald. I'd just ask Chris this one. You'd mentioned that the players, they're not performing, or they don't seem to kind of go at teams with 10. But are we back to talking? And I asked this earlier to Tom and Donald as well, Chris. Is it the way they've been set to play? Is it a management issue that these players aren't getting what we expect out of them, or the performance that we're looking for? Not necessarily to go and beat Rovers, but to compete. Is that is it a coaching? Is it we've an extra man, albeit against a better side, but is it just the way they're set up to play? Or have the players, have they taken that game into their own hands tonight and gone off? At one stage, Pat Hooban was crossing the ball in the 93rd minute out from the right-hand side. I don't know what happened there, how he managed to get out there, but is it? Do we question again the way they're coached, or is it just they're just not at the races for the last couple of weeks, probably all season really?
Yeah, there's an element of it all season, but there's definitely an element in the past few weeks, and Donald just touched on a point there. There seems to be a bit of a like an identity crisis within the team, and we've come up against Bows, we were leading, comfortable in the game, managed to throw that away. Played Pats, and we managed to get ourselves back in the game in the start of the second half. They go down to 10 men, and then we managed to throw that one away. Then we're rolling up to Tallaght. Now, these are the other teams we're meant to be beating around us, and these other teams are meant to be a step above us. And I think we've gone in with that mentality of, we can't even beat these other teams. How are we going to do this? We've seen this. We're not massively blown away. Teams like Shells, Pats, and Bows. We're either underperforming or we've got credible draws out of them. But last year, I think we were probably beating those teams, and we had a lot more confidence about ourselves.
Yeah,
I think, and that's what's happening. That even it's like a form of PTSD or something. When we go a man up, we just panic. We just don't know what to do. We don't know how to take advantage of having that extra man. And I don't know if that's just been regimental in our formation, that we stay in that and we play the game we're playing, but that doesn't actually give us any advantage when we have the extra man on the pitch, because that player just isn't in a position on the pitch to utilize the extra space.
Yeah.
Like I got to see a bit at the end of the match, and we just seemed to be crossing ball after ball after ball after ball. But their penalty box was absolutely rammed full of Shamrock Rovers players. And then we had maybe 2-3 players sitting on the edge box waiting to hit the ball as hard as they can towards the goal. But there's that many players, they just kept getting block after block after block.
Yeah.
And all I thought was, we've got natural wit. We had Ryan O'Kane on one side at the end and Tallaght on the other side. Why aren't we just whipping a cross in that the keeper kind of going, like, I need someone to make a decision, exactly like the first goal that Pat scored against us, where Shep was like, I can't come because there's people in front of me. Yeah. Let's see, whip it in. If no one gets a touch on this, it's going to be a goal. And And if not, we're going to make the keeper, make a save, and anything could happen for it. And look what happened in the Pats match and ended up being their first goal. But we never even done that. We seem to just be knocking long balls over, and hoping we were going to get a ricochet or something, or a fumble at the back post. Nothing would seem to be hitting with pace and purpose. And I don't think there's been pace or purpose maybe for a few games with this team.
I think Rovers would know that we weren't good enough to play through the middle of them. So they're just like, all these boys are going to be able to do is try and hit Hubin. So we'll double him. And then, because you would have seen, like, Mali won a couple of headers from crosses and stuff.
Yeah.
That were like, but I think they were just like they're not gonna play through us. They're not gonna create something. The only thing they're gonna be able to do is stick it out to the fullbacks. Like Archie Davis is crossing the ball from Harold's cross. Like, he's miles away from the box and he's putting balls in.
Yeah.
And you're like, I know it worked. It has worked in the past, but like the boys, like Pico Lopez is standing staring at the ball coming to him for about 20 minutes, going like, when will I jump for this?
Yeah.
Like,
But that's bread and butter for him.
Stuff up. Yeah, just doubling that up. Like, but we had nothing else. We couldn't do anything else. And that's as much down to, like, that's Rovers being good, as well as us not being very imaginative in situations like that. So it's not just us. Fucking hate saying good things about them.
And I was going to come on. I was going to come on and talk about that beautiful stadium, but I said I'm not even going to mention that.
It's not even theirs.
There you go. Donald's back. But here's the thing, like you were saying, Gally, is it that they're sticking too much to their formation or their way of playing? Is that the problem that we can't see outside that? You look at Drogheda when they went there, what's that, 2 games ago? They literally stuck to their game plan and beat them.
Yeah.
Like that's exactly how Drogheda play. They'll tippy-tap their way to get out of trouble, but they've willing runners in the likes of Darren Markey that can change a game.
Yeah.
Dale Rooney's finish at the end of that brilliant passage of play, like that's the difference. We do not have somebody in the squad. Like you said, Donald, it's probably Robbie Benson. But this was the problem when we lost Robbie Benson the first time to Pats. We went, we can't replace him. Oh, let's get him back. Now we're kind of saying, we can't replace Chris Shields. Like, we're gonna have a problem when we can't replace Pat Hubin then as well. Do you know what I mean?
That's the thing.
And that's the one. That's why they need to find a different way of playing. Even Pat Hubin tonight probably was as in and out of the game as I've seen him in the last. Not really. Not like 1 or 2 headers, but it didn't have a massive effect on the game. And I don't know whether maybe I'm overlooking stuff, but I don't think so. Look at Pat owes us nothing. I mean, considering what he's doing, and like I know Frank had mentioned, he might not even get his record if they keep performing like that. He keeps having to come. He was so wide tonight looking for the ball. And you got to find a different way of playing sometimes. And it's.
But we've seen that in Pat before, Gally. When Pat starts getting frustrated, he starts dropping very, very deep. He starts dropping into unnatural position from because he's trying to kickstart something. But unfortunately for us, the way Dundalk plays, the only way we can do it is when we get Pat on the end of that move. Yet he's inverted, gone in now, trying to kickstart something, and that's. We've seen it once or twice, of course, where he's started something and managed to have the pace to get himself back into the right position. But it's impossible to be able to do that all the time. Yeah, and you're right. We need a new way of playing. We have built this system, and this system is probably within the Dundalk FC DNA that's been there from Stephen Kenny. You were mentioning probably some of the best football we played of late is probably still back in the Vinnie Perth era, and that's carried on into this era. And we're still playing the same way, but the personnel either isn't good enough or is not available, and that's the problem.
There was a point when we the season that Vinnie won the league that we played Rovers in Oriel. I think they won the league that night, or effectively won the league that night. And I think everybody was sort of looking at the two squads, being like, their squad is right next to ours. Like they've built and built and built, and they have a team that look like they're going to challenge. And then from that next season on, that was the next season the COVID. It would have been the COVID season, I think.
Yeah, it would have been the COVID one after that.
Yeah. So that was like when we started tailing off and
the half season.
Yeah. I don't even think that one counts. So but the recruitment and everything they just surpassed us. Their squad just got better than ours, like a lot better than ours. And you're in that position now of like, we probably don't have the players to throw on and play a different system.
Yep.
But they have got the players to play a different system. They have ways of being like, right, well, we'll move this player here because he's good enough to do that. Yeah. But we don't have that. So I just feel like I've said that like a million times tonight, that their squad is just far better than ours. And that's just the reality of it.
You know how we could have changed that, Donald, is when you think back to our old teams, when we were struggling there, you could still give the ball to Mickey Duffy and something could happen. You could give the ball to Fats and anything could happen. You could give the ball to Robbie Benson. Like when you had all these guys all playing together, like as an opposition, you know, right now you could say if you stop the ball getting to such a position with Dundalk, they just cannot play.
Yeah.
Towards we look back at that team, you're like, well, if you try to stop Fats, then you've got Mickey Duffy, right? So we got to Mickey Duffy, but then you give him Robbie Benson too much space. Okay, so let's get Robbie Benson, but then you can't leave Pat Hoban on. Okay, so we need to, you know, like we had multiple areas of attack and importance in our team. It wasn't necessarily one or two players, as it probably relies more so on now. I think it was more of a massive collection of highly skilled footballers that were, you know, and it showed from what a lot of those players won back then as well. Like they were at the pinnacle of their careers when they were playing for us. And unfortunately, like you say, Donald, our squad has probably, you know, it has become weaker. And the size of the squad has become weaker, and now we seem to be shopping in a different window. Like we talked about some of the top talent in Ireland, and we were only talking about Lordigan last week. That, you know, we wanted him and we couldn't get him. There was a time where if Dundalk wanted anybody in the league, a bit like Shamrock Rovers right now, you got him. Whether it was with your rivals or not, it didn't make a difference. You got him.
Yeah,
and we're not there now, and that can be hard to take, but that's the reality of where we are right now.
Yeah, and there's no better example of that. Like you mentioned them already, and I don't know if we doing the man of the match competition, like because
we'll do a best.
We may as well just give it to Chris Shields, because we haven't given it to him in a while.
Yeah, I think so.
But the thing that the way we would have played with all those attacking players, like it's the wave after wave thing. It's like, right, you're attacking, and then when the defense clears it out, or if they try and counterattack, you need someone to break it up. And he was absolutely magnificent at breaking up counterattacks. And then you're able to recycle the ball and you're putting them under pressure again. And it just keeps coming back and keeps coming back. And we don't have that player. And he hasn't been replaced. And it's not like they have bought players to play in a position like that. Like,
yeah,
you know, Doyle can play there. Alfie Lewis can play there. Sloggett can play there. Like they can all do it, but they're not at the level that he was at, that he was able to like sustain attacks for us. And I watched this video about Sergio Busquets the other day, and it was like how the best European teams used to be judged on how well their number 10 played, but now they're all being judged on how well their number 5 plays, like how well their Busquets player plays, because he's so integral to how you work possession through the thirds of the field, how you relieve pressure, how you break up counterattacks. And I think without that player, we're always going to be in trouble against Rovers, because it's like I said, they scored the same goals against us last year where they could just break through the middle of the field. And we can't pin teams in like we used to, because we don't have a way of winning the ball back high up the pitch. Like we don't seem to have Andy Boyle's an awful lot of time for Andy Boyle, but you don't imagine he's going to win the ball up 30 yards from the opponent's goal, because if he doesn't win it, then he's never getting back. You know, like we need someone to win the ball up high up the pitch. We don't have them, and trying to find a good one. Like I know Chris Shields wasn't even that player when we got him, and he just sort of developed into it. But we're going to have to do that again, because that position that's a huge hole if we want to play even in Europe. Imagine like in Europe, if we like how many times we're going to get counterattacked in Europe. It's going to be ridiculous.
Hopefully we just get the Welsh teams and we're okay though, right?
But that's what you're hoping for. Now. You're hoping for that kind of.
It's going to be clipped.
That kind of
Clip
ilk.
that bit.
Yeah, that kind of ilk. It's just look, it's look. I agree with everything. That's why we are at the minute. We're not that. We just are that club with them, and it seems to be just going from top to bottom. It's not even squad. It seems to be everything kind of that comes with it. All the trimmings, Chris, isn't it?
Yeah. Look, I'm slightly jumping ahead here, but like if we're talking about levels and kind of where we are with all of this, I think if you quickly just look at the table as it stands here tonight, if it comes.
Thank God you had that, Chris. I didn't bring that up at all.
See, that's what I'm here for. Like if you look at Shamrock Rovers top on 36 points, Derry 35 points, Bows 33 points, and then Pat's fourth on 32 points. That's nearly, you could probably draw a line there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And say those four probably have better squads than everything else then below it. And consistency and everything. Shells have a level of consistency, but if you just look, they just don't have that clinical way to win games. They're just drawing, they're just not losing. And they're going along just not losing. But then you come down and you look at like the inconsistency, the runs of teams below who, like Cork, I know they've just won 3 in a row after winning tonight. But before that, they went on a run of, 4 or 5 games of losing. UCD losing again. Drogheda, lost 3, won 2 of the last 5. Sligo, 1 win in their last. There's a level of inconsistency with all the teams below that. And then you go and you look at the teams above it, and it's 3, 4 wins here. Bows probably could be on the slide, maybe not. But then you look at their last few games, they have a win tonight and 2 draws, so they're still not losing as much now, and perhaps sort of towards we just are struggling to find a way of winning. Now, when this run of fixtures came, we were kind of all thinking this is a much tougher run of fixtures. But we actually haven't got anything out of it bar the 1 draw at with Bows that we really should have won. So that's of no benefit. Otherwise, we haven't really put anything on the board in the past 4 games. I think that's the difference. I think you could literally draw a line from under Pats at the moment and say that top half will probably fight it out for the top 4. And we're in with the inconsistency teams down below. No, I don't think we'd be anywhere near a relegation battle or anything like that, but I just not too sure we have the squad or the belief this year just to kick into the top 4. I'd love for that to change. And look, we're only halfway through the season, so that has time to change. But right now, I just think that's probably more realistic of where it goes. Yeah,
and just when we have the table, we have our we'll just quickly discuss the next 2 games. Probably we've UCD Monday night, we've Cork on Friday, then we have a break. Are we looking now? We can't even be asking for 4 points. We got to be looking for 6. We really know.
Can Cork give us 6?
Which?
Can Cork give us 6? No.
Like Dolan was saying, there might be 1,500 people if we're lucky on Monday night at Oriel Park
for the UCD game, yeah. And for the UCD game at Drogheda, they put something out. I think it was 40, 50 euro, and that was enough for any team to come along. With the adults went kind of for free, and over on the away terrace where they knew there was going to have nobody in it, there was maybe five local teams had come in, and there was loads, and they were all wearing their kits, and they were in the away section, but they were singing away and they were chanting away, and they were all having a laugh. And I just thought, brilliant. UCD guaranteed not to have a big attendance, so do something for the community. We have it on a bank holiday weekend. We're going to have a lower attendance on it, and we haven't done any initiative to get new people through the door.
Yeah, and I think was it on the I mentioned the press box earlier. The lads were talking about the away games that are coming up and the home games that are coming up. There's not many. We're in a bit of a lull over the next couple of weeks, and there just seems to be James Rogers had spoken. Not to go on about another podcast, lads, but he'd raised a good issue that there doesn't seem to be anything behind the scenes. I know there's sponsors coming in for the youngsters, the women's football and the men, but there seems to be nothing for games like this coming up. There doesn't seem to be anything to kind of say, right, we're on a bit of a bad patch. Let's, get fans involved. Let's get something that does. We're back to this crap of talking about, we mentioned this at our very first podcast. You need to get more fan involvement. And look at Frank, and they do fantastic work at the 1903. There's, that's been set up, since we've started our podcast, but there just doesn't seem to be a want to do it either. That's the frightening thing. There doesn't seem to be anything kind of, it's kind of every week, just, get players on the pitch, see what happens.
There's your next few fixtures.
Yeah, there we go.
We've one home game and then we're away. Plus you have your big break there from the 9th to the end. So obviously we were international break before the draw of the game.
Book them flights.
Yeah. And then we're back. Then we're back again to, Pats, Rovers and Bows again. After that, then again. Yeah. So you've got 3 games coming up now that, we were able to put our little mini run on before, and you really need to start doing that again. And this is the way this season could go. It just could be peaks and troughs like that when you're not playing the teams in that top 4, you might be able to go on a run, but when you come back to playing them again, we don't seem to have.
I really hope so, Pingu. I really hope.
I really hope they're not.
We should bring them down in a limo and give them full star treatment and bring them out.
That's probably going to be the bright spot of it. That's probably going to be the bright spot of the game. The 2 boys talking about their.
Give a shout out to Stewie Byrne, who apparently has never watched a game of football in his life, doing commentary tonight, which was fair play to him. I didn't think he'd be able to make it through 90 minutes, having known absolutely nothing about football. But it was nice of RT to give him a
leg up.
Sorry, that's very harsh on us, Stewie.
They'll probably say that about us on the podcast. Every week these boys are on after games, and they don't know what to talk about.
We say it about each other on the podcast, for God's sakes. It's not even that. We don't even need outside counsel for that. We already know we know nothing.
Chris, before we wrap up, we'll get you as you are the main man here, and you've been in Weavers Park tonight. We're going to let you go scroll through the comments there. We're going to look for it. We haven't gone for man of the match pizza tonight because, quite frankly, there isn't one. Unfortunately, we've had to do this. I think we've had to not give away a man of the match pizza. This is our total. This is our hat trick.
Yeah, it is a bit of
season, which I don't think up until the end of last season we hadn't done that in total. In 2 seasons, so it's a real.
No, but in the Madcap season, I remember we kept going the 5-0 defeat in that, but we were like, nah, just somebody commented something. That sort of way. We were just like, no, not going through that.
So, Chris, we let you select winner for tonight, and
kind of from your conversation at the start as well, you were kind of mentioning that it's probably people's frustration at the lack of consistency of this team. And there's kind of a little bit of a questioning the tactics or possibly even skip as well at times. Yeah. So I think there could be 2 camps starting to form here. And I'm hoping, pretty much like yourselves, that we get some wins on the board, because I wouldn't want to see Skip put under that much pressure to either walks or the club feel they have to do something. So I think just for a little bit more lighthearted, maybe Frank's comments there that though if the Rovers team was still in the dressing room, they we still wouldn't score. I think we'll give it to Frank there for that tonight. That probably sums up from what I could see of that match tonight. That seemed to be pretty good. So Frank, there you go. Don't say we don't look after you.
I would just say happy 40th coming up for David Moore as well. Happy birthday. We tune in next week. Might be able to sort you out a wee something.
There we go.
Friend of the show. We get you. If you go and meet up with Frank, he'll give you half the pizza. You'll be grand.
There you go,
lads. Look, it's been emotional. It's been one of those nights again, hasn't it? This is probably our 5th or 6th in a row now. We're coming on. It's the same. Look, it's not to say you don't want to be harping on about certain stuff and behind the scene. Look, you just really want to see performances, isn't it? That's all we're looking for. Like we said, like Donald had said, you can take a 2-0 in Tallaght if the performance is up to scratch, and it's just not there at the minute. And that probably sums up. Like I think you had mentioned PTSD, Chris. I think that's probably going to be the name of the podcast when it goes out on Spotify. But yeah, look, how do we finish off a show like that, Chris? It's one of those that's just.
Yeah, look, it's a tough one, but I think the shocker was, that I got accused of not even being in the goalkeeping union. I don't even know who I played for. I have 2 shields out in the summer league. Hang on a second. Double shield winner, pal. They don't come around every day. Yeah. So
who was it? Who was the team you played for?
Carlingford. Peter Jacks.
Yeah, Peter Jacks. I was actually thinking of Peter Jacks. That's what I couldn't think of.
Yeah. The Jockeys, Lumpers. That's what I played for. Bluebell in the summer league here in town. So like the list goes on, but that doesn't seem to matter when I'm not here. My reputation was under threat. So I want the closing notes of this to remark that the Dundalk team has PTSD and I'm a double shield winner.